Everybody, welcome to the morning meeting. It's a new week in the presidential race. Sean, Tim, and I here to cover it all for you. We have some polls to talk about today, three new ads we're going to take a look at, as always. Eager to hear what's on your mind, get your questions and comments. If you're here on the two-way platform and you'd like to be part of the conversation, please raise your electronic hand. As always, we urge those of you who haven't been here before to raise your hand if you'd like to be part of it. And as always, we urge you to remember the ethos of what we're doing here, the presumption of grace, peace, love, and understanding. That applies to those of you watching on YouTube who are tempted to go into the chat and write negative things. Please don't do that. You can have a spirited conversation, but no ad hominem attacks or personal insults or anything that you might see on a normal platform. Grateful again for everybody joining us, guys. Let's get right to it. Scheduled today, the vice president's in Washington today. As far as we know, no public events. She's having a bunch of closed meetings, including with the president of the UAE. Donald Trump, two events in Pennsylvania, one in the afternoon. I'm not sure exactly what time. I've heard different times, but it's in the afternoon. With Lee Zeldin, Rick Grinnell, he's going to talk about banning the ability of Chinese Communist Party to own U.S. agricultural land, an issue that tests about 80-20, which in politics is code for good idea. And then he's got a rally tonight in Indiana, Pennsylvania at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Tim Walz is in Gotham City raising money. J.D. Vance, two events in North Carolina, both in Charlotte, both connected to the Get Out the Vote. One is at 5 o'clock, one is at 6:30. Doug Emhoff is doing events in Texas, and Joe Biden is coming to New York by the end of the day to get ready for the UN meetings. All right, guys, the big polls over the weekend that got so much attention. One, an NBC News poll, the national poll. I continue to not understand national polls, but NBC News national poll showing Harris up big. And then out this morning, New York Times polls. There you see them in three of the four South Sunbelt battlegrounds, with Trump having a lead. Now, as I was told a month ago by the Trump people, they're not necessarily right, but the Times poll reflects reality, and it matches up. Some private polling suggests that what they forecast a month ago, which is that over time, once the Harris honeymoon ended, that she would fall back to where Joe Biden was before the Biden-Trump debate, which is to say behind sufficiently in the four Sunbelt states that are a path to victory, was winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Nebraska too. If the Republicans change the rules in Nebraska, that would lead her with no paths. Doesn't mean the Trump people are right. But if you do, as I do, which is talk to both sides and credit those who are making arguments as possibly right, Sean, is it possible that we're right where the Republicans said we'd be, based on the Times poll, that Donald Trump is pulling the Sunbelt states back and she's going to have a very narrow single path and maybe no path?
Yeah, I mean, look, the key thing in that poll that I think is interesting is that it's Trump's at 50 in Arizona, 49 in Georgia, 49 in North Carolina. You really want to be at 50 to start to feel a little bit of ease. Still on the margin of error in both Georgia and North Carolina, but this is exactly what they've been saying all along. And I don't think it's a stretch to think that those three states in particular, who have a history of voting Republican, Georgia and Arizona in particular, come back home, right? They were anomalies, extremely close last cycle. So that's not, the North Carolina, I think, will continue to be close. But the bottom line is, if you take those three states, which I do think Trump will, all you need is one in that blue wall. So Michigan, Wisconsin, or Pennsylvania, I'm particularly bullish on Pennsylvania. But the bottom line is, that's if he picks off one more state, he wins. And that's the key thing, the Trump victory. And it's not just, he can go Wisconsin, he can go any of the three, and that puts him back in the White House. She needs to get everything. And that's the difference when it comes to the Electoral College, is that it's a much better road for him than it is for her right now.
Yeah. Tim, on Wednesday, the vice president, Reuters says, is giving a big economic speech. On this program, we talk all the time. Is she doing enough? And of course, Democratic critics say Trump's no more specific on policy, but there's counters to that. One is, of course, the New York Times poll shows this as well. Voters liked the Trump years, even though she's narrowed the gap on who do you like better on the economy. She's narrowed the gap largely by bringing Democrats and independents who lean Democrat back home. Even if she narrows the gap to 5, that could still be dispositive. I want to show you one thing, which is a tweet to 106, please. Somebody over the weekend on Bill Maher, Stephanie Rule, and others were saying it's false to say we don't know what Harris's policies are. We do know what her policies are, and then some random person, I don't know who that is, on Twitter invoked all of us to say it's false. So there's two things I think that Democrats are arguing now, Tim, as my big lead up to letting you in here finally. One is Trump's so evil, it doesn't matter if we know what Harris's policies are. You just got to be for Harris because Trump is so evil. And the other is Trump is vague too. And of course, that's true on healthcare, on childcare, on a bunch of issues. Trump is vague too. So where's your head as we start the week and 2 days away from this alleged Harris speech? Where are you on, does she need to be more specific to win the election or not?
Yeah. Where my head is at right now is happy birthday to Sean Spicer. 39 looks great on you.
Ruined. I had a big surprise at the end. You've ruined, but okay.
Fine, there we go.
As long as it involved cash, I still
I'll get cake, right? No, look, I think the Harris campaign is being responsive. I think there are calls for more policy, for more interviews, and I think we are seeing them roll out additional paper, additional policy, because while the gap is closing, while there is some momentum there, they do recognize that there needs to be a little bit more done on both of those fronts. So I think that is one positive for Democrats to see, is that they are being responsive to the pressures. The other is just on this polling. You hate to get into like an individual poll and be like, this doesn't look right. I mean, if you do believe that New York Times poll, particularly in the battlegrounds, particularly in Arizona, then there has been a 10-point swing post-debate towards Trump. I'm not saying that disqualifies the whole poll or it's all wrong, but that is a little bit difficult to believe, in particular against the backdrop of the slew of polls that we've seen come out from NBC, CBS, going down the list, Morning Consult, particularly in the battleground states, showing a very close slight Harris advantage in the margin of error. So, and looking at, Nate Silver's bulletin, looking at 538, the chances that they both have to win there, have seen a bump for her post-debate. So maybe, again, the New York Times Siena poll is a harbinger of something, but I feel like we've had this conversation before of, their poll kind of makes Democrats take a beat and Republicans sigh a breath of relief. But we just are seeing sort of a mismatch between that poll and a lot of the other public polling. And we won't know until the end.
Yeah. Dave Wasserman of the Cook Political Report famously on election night, when he has enough data to make a projection, he says, I've seen enough. I think the correct response to the Times Siena poll is we haven't seen enough. There's just not enough to know. But again, it does match with what the Trump people have been saying was going to happen. And we'll have to keep watching that super closely. I think that, as I said before, I think the three Great Lakes states will stay close or in play at least. And that Harris can't put any of the four Sunbelt states away, but Trump can. And if he does, obviously it changes things quite a bit. All right, let's look at some ads. I want to first look at a new Harris ad on IVF. Let's go 103, please.
IVF is a miracle for us because it allowed us to have our family. After having my daughter, I wanted more children, but my embryo transfer was canceled 8 days before the procedure. Donald Trump overturning Roe v. Wade stopped us from growing the family that we wanted. I don't want politicians telling me how or when I can have a baby. We need a president that will protect our rights, and that's Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
Tim, your Siskel, Sean Ebert, thumbs up, thumbs down. What do you think of that spot?
Thumbs up. I think they're continuing to press this advantage on reproductive rights, on choice. I think there's a story to continue to tell. I mean, trying to pass legislation in the Senate that gets a thumbs down. Obviously, Republicans are going to scream that this is just messaging legislation. That ad is also messaging. I think is really effective.
Sean.
Disingenuous, but good.
Why is it disingenuous?
Because IVF is not under attack. I mean, this is a ridiculous issue in terms of someone attacking it. Donald Trump's made it very clear that they're not going to take away your IVF rights.
To the contrary, he wants to give it away.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
Is that an Obamacare program? Like, does that go under the ACA? Is that an Obamacare expansion from Trump? I just want to know, like, how's that?
Good question.
That being
He's got
said,
a plan.
Look, is it effective? Does it reach a good key constituents?
Right.
Yes.
I should have just taken yes for an answer. All right, let's look at it. There's a bunch of new Trump, both ads and videos. Some of them are quite long. They're clearly not ads, they're just web videos. But let's look at one. I don't know how much money's behind it, but 104, please.
We as Americans must stand together.
We have to unify
let's focus on unifying this country. We really want to heal this nation right now.
I'm proud to endorse Donald Trump because he is our best hope.
The President of the United States has got to represent the country. They're representing everyone in America. I think you want someone who is strong and courageous.
No matter what state you live in, you should be voting for Donald Trump. So let's get Donald Trump elected on November 5th.
Jim, if you can take a deep breath and set aside your feelings about Donald Trump running on unity. He does have 4 iconic figures there on his behalf, at least 4. What do you think of that spot?
Not the best produced spot from the Trump team, which is interesting because normally I think their production quality is pretty good, which tells me this is probably just a digital ad. I don't know what this is, probably not going up on television. Would be my guess, unless we know that to be the case. And
you mean because it's like it's oddly edited, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's oddly edited.
Yeah.
And if it's targeted, I think it's good, right? I don't know, people who have the persuasions of following the politics of RFK or Tulsi. I don't think, though, that if the play is these are Democrats who like Trump, you should vote for Trump, that it's really going to have that much of a sway with that cast of characters. So if it's targeted, sure, it's decent.
Sean, it doesn't identify them as Democrats, which is kind of interesting, right? But I hear from some pollsters on both sides that the Kennedy endorsement and to some extent the Tulsi Gabbard endorsement have really helped Trump, not in some dramatic way, but incrementally they've helped him with women, moms, they've helped him with black voters. So curious what you think of that spot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Tim a little that it's not like the most compelling. It's more of a reminder, like, hey, in case you didn't hear, these guys endorsed him. But I think my general view is that most people who were supporting RFK or Tulsi know who they're with now. Even Elon, if you're that into Elon Musk or X, then you kind of know where he stands. I think it's fine. There's no disclaimer at the end. This is Donald Trump. I approve this. Therefore, they're not really putting money behind it. So I think it's fine. I mean, you cut these all the time and throw them into the ether. This isn't one that I think is a game changer. Yeah. But and I will say this, just as a disclaimer, and I think this is what Tim was getting at the beginning. They have been they're very high quality, I think, in terms of their ads in the past, and this editing and didn't hit that level. And I don't know that that's what intention was. So I don't want to try to mix that, but normally they're very strong.
All right. If you live in a battleground state, or like me, you have the capacity to monitor television in battleground states, you'll see there are lots of ads on, right? And a lot of them from the campaigns and the super PACs, but the groups are going to start advertising, and it's going to become even more crowded. This is an ad. It's, I believe, the first ad up in Arizona on behalf of the abortion rights ballot measure that we've all discussed so much is potentially affecting the race. And so let's take a look, please, at 105.
Imagine being here. Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
Listen, for helping you. That's the truth about Arizona's abortion ban. It forces women who are miscarrying or having complications to wait. Wait until a medical emergency.
But you can end Arizona's abortion ban by voting yes on Prop 139. Yes puts women and doctors back in charge and ends the ban. Arizona can't wait any longer. Vote yes.
Yes on 139. Sean, you first. What do you think of that spot?
I mean, look, I disagree with it, but it's a good ad, and I think it's obviously effective. The last poll shows 58% of Arizonans are supporting the measure. So, and it gets the people out that they want. So this is sort of more of anything else, a GOTV effort on their side, and it's working.
Tim?
Yeah, these types of ads, you try to be really nonpartisan, because as much as that ballot measure can help the Harris-Walz ticket, you need to capture some Republicans who are going to also not vote for Harris-Walz, but at the same time that buoys and maybe helps the top of the ticket a little bit by driving out some additional voters. So, and there's one on the ballot in Nevada too. So Nevada, Arizona are both very interesting to watch those ads come out as, you try to drive voters who are mostly energized by the pro-choice ballot measure to also vote for Harris at the top of the ticket.
All right, one more topic, and then we're going to go to your questions. Please, if you're here on the two-way platform, you'd like to get involved in the conversation, please raise your hand. Again, as always, we'd love new people, diverse in every way. Please raise your hand if you want to be part of it. Tim, what's something Donald Trump and his team are doing well right now? Like not the most obvious things, but what's something kind of off the beaten path you see them doing that looks shrewd to you?
Yeah. I actually think they're doing a drumbeat of interviews pretty well in safe places for him, but able to get him sitting down. Cheryl Atkinson, Full Measure, which I think aired over the weekend. He continues to do podcasts that are a little niche but reach communities that he needs to reach. I think they have a smart strategy sitting down and talking to reporters that they want to talk to, getting out the message they want to get out.
Yep, good point. Sean, something Trump's doing that's smart.
Yeah, I've been big on what Tim just said. I think that's been brilliant. I'll just couple it by saying I think they've used surrogates in a very effective way. It's not just having them go out there; they have these conversations with them. So it's not just deploying them, which they do, but it's also utilizing them at events in a way. Trump has done a series of like couch type interviews where he did one with Sarah Huckabee Sanders the other day in Michigan. He did one with Tiffany Justice in DC where he sits down and they have a conversation. I actually, as a guy who's known the guy for over 10 years now, enjoy watching them a lot more than say a speech. It's much more of a lax conversation. So I think the manner and the way in which they've used surrogates is actually effective.
So maybe by coincidence, the Biden administration this morning put out something trying to stop Chinese EVs from penetrating the U.S. market. I don't really know what that's about. I just saw it fly by, but perhaps a coincidence. But as I mentioned earlier, Donald Trump is talking about China and buying land here. I think going hard on China to me seems very smart. It's a huge hot button issue for so many Americans. It cuts across from Sanders supporters to Trump supporters. And Kamala Harris, this is an issue. I can't tell you like sort of what her posture is towards fighting communist China. I don't really know, except the things the administration's done, but she's not associated with it. And this allows him to emotionally associate himself. Yes, Sean.
Mark, I'm so glad you brought that up. I did this thing on my show the other day where I asked someone on a panel, name an issue that you thought would be probably more discussed and it's not. I've been bringing up China over and over again to me, and I'm actually more surprised that Trump's not bringing it up. It is something that I think invokes a sense. I mean, it's a fear-based thing, right? It's economic and military strength of China, the growth. I've been shocked that we haven't talked more about China economically and security-wise.
Yes, well, he's doing it. He's doing it today in Pennsylvania, of all places. Sean, what's something the Harris campaign's doing that's smart?
I think the way that they've been going to rural areas. They haven't yielded. They've really made a play for red counties, red states, and not thinking they're going to win them, but to drive up the Democratic vote in places where they don't traditionally do. They understand. I mean, again, it's all about math, and I think they get it smartly.
Tim.
Yeah. I could just say raising money, like the money advantage is crazy, and may actually have an impact on the race when normally you're fighting to a draw. But I actually do think, and I said this earlier, I think they are being responsive to the pressures and some of the crosswinds that the campaign is hitting on. Do you need to do more interviews? Do you need to roll out more policy? I think people aren't just cautious and saying, well, we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. They're actually being responsive. And just very quickly on the farmland thing, it is interesting. I looked this up just now. 100,000 acres purchased by the Chinese in the U.S. of farmland during Donald Trump's presidency, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, under anyone's presidency. So it's an interesting issue. I don't think we're going to go like back and forth on it. I don't think the Harris campaign is, going to, or the Trump campaign is going to pick a huge fight on it. But I'm not sure the facts totally line up there for Trump.
I think the way they're managing the press is brilliant, and they're doing everything they can to keep the free ride going. And some of it's happening organically, but they're doing a lot to keep it going. It's historically brilliant. David Porter, welcome in. Tell everybody where you are if they don't know, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind.
Oregon, supporting Trump. This is the third time. The first 2016, I voted quietly for Trump. It's gotten louder. My question is on the movement we had during COVID, all the people moving from certainly Oregon, California, the Northeast, down south into some of these battleground states. Do we know the registration? Do we know what happened in Pennsylvania? Do you know what happened in North Carolina? Arizona, I think it looks as if Arizona and Nevada did get an uptick in Republican voters. And those are, I'm guessing those are very likely voters, people that fled.
Guys, thank you, David. Guys, thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is.
They're doing a lot of ID work. That's obviously an important thing. So that's, we've talked about this before, where a lot of the things that we see, the ads or whatever, the low propensity voters, and that includes new registrants, right? People who they get to turn out. Maybe you moved from California to Arizona, California to, well, no one moved to New York. If the data that follows is where the campaign then goes in. And on both sides, it just hammers away and says, hey, have you registered to vote? Do you have a plan? Do you vote early? So they know them, they factored it in. And I will just say that there's a really interesting point that you're bringing up. We keep talking about the screen for voters. I don't think in many cases this is a huge percentage, but it's enough in a 10,000 person race that this could be another factor afterwards. We say, did we miss the migration factor that changed in some of these places? Anyway, it's a good question. The campaigns are on it in terms of making sure that they keep up with people as they move. And then we'll have to see a lot afterwards, whether or not, how much that might have affected anything from polling, et cetera.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Sean. I mean, we know a little bit. We don't know everything. The people who know the most are the campaigns, because they've had a field operation running, for 2-3 years, trying to ID where people have went. So it'll be interesting, but I don't think we have a solid public answer on that.
David, thank you. Come back regularly. Appreciate it. Some of the things we need to do here on two-way, both the morning meeting and elsewhere, is the issues David raised. Also, absentee ballots, voter reg, all of that stuff. Tracking the ads. We're working on plans for all those things, but they are tough to do unless you're the campaigns themselves, who have so much more motivation and resources to do it. Mr. Gluskin, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Unmute, please. Tell folks who don't know where you are, who you're supporting, and what's on your mind, please.
I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm a bit of a unicorn. I'm a strong Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, and I'm really angry about Gaza, and I'm part of Rabbis for Ceasefire, and there are many more people in the Jewish community who support putting pressure on Israel to respond more appropriately and considering human lives. And I have been knocking on doors for Biden since March. So,
and are you supporting Harris?
Harris all the way. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Was relieved but what I'm saying is, and I think there are more people like this. I'm part of the anti-Trump coalition, committed, loyal person in that. At the same time, I'm going to speak my views and disagree with the Democratic Party where I disagree with them. I'm angry at the party for many reasons, and I'm 100% voting. Not only am I voting for Harris, I'm signed up to door knock 2 days of every weekend from now until November, and I've been door knocking since March. And I think, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay, sorry to interrupt. Do you consider Vice President Harris more sympathetic to your point of view on Israel than Joe Biden, or no difference, or less sympathetic?
Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe more sympathetic.
Maybe. I mean, Biden's personal love of Israel kind of got in the way of his good foreign policy smarts, and so that was disappointing. And I'd also just like to put out there what seems obvious to me, Israel's existence is at threat right now. It was not on October 10th. I'm certainly not blaming Israel for everything, and I relate and have relatives there. I do not minimize Jewish trauma, but the Israel responded in a way that has put itself at way more danger than it was on October 10th or October 15th. I'm not suggesting there shouldn't have been a response. I'm saying and so I just want to challenge, as a Jewish person, I've been to Israel 7 times. I love Israel. And I am, I see op-eds in the center left in Israel that literally say, America, save us, meaning put pressure on Israel to chill. And so that's just that doesn't get out there a lot.
Are you an active rabbi now?
No, I'm retired, but
Okay.
but your rabbinic credential never goes away.
Yeah.
I'm part of.
But you don't have a congregation
No,
whose
I do
point of
not
view.
have a congregation. No,
Okay.
and it's very, yeah.
Ask your question, and then I bet Sean and Tim will at least have some questions for you, one each. But go ahead.
Well, I want to, with grace and humility, I want to share Mark's opinion of disappointment in both Tim and Sean in their response to the fake ad in Michigan in a Jewish area that was it said it was a pro-Harris ad, but in fact it was targeted at Arab voters trying to get them to vote against Harris. So I was disappointed with their response that they would not have been the adult in the room to say this goes too far.
That was my answer.
I give Sean 1 point above Tim. I like both of you really, but Sean admitted that more quickly. Tim, he was hedging and trying to make it hard to understand his response.
All right, hold on there, because it's in fairness, I want to give them both a chance to respond. And I will just say, political consultants have a tough job in trying to win races, particularly when their client interests are clear. And both parties have done things in the last few cycles and historically that I think civilians would say, how could you possibly do that? On the Democratic side, all the ads intended to help MAGA candidates get nominations. People have had real moral problems with those. And I could cite things on the other side, but I don't want to go back and try to relitigate your recollection of what Sean and Tim said versus what they actually said, because that's too complicated. All I want is Tim and then Sean. You guys, why don't you just from scratch explain how you felt about that ad and whether if you were on a campaign and that ad was proposed, what you would say. Tim first.
Yeah. No, I will say what I believe I said and reiterate that I would have walked out. I thought that ad was a bridge too far.
No. I didn't.
Sean. Okay.
I just want to go back and take the point and the win.
No. You got to take. He can have a mulligan or not, but you were pretty clear to say all's fair, and that ad was
and look, I would say this: there are things that I don't feel comfortable sometimes in politics saying or doing, but if you believe in the greater good and you are not lying, then there are things that you say or do or allow to happen that you might not feel comfortable with, but you believe in the greater good of what you can do if you win, and that's the game of politics. I know that that's sometimes difficult for folks to hear. It's when you look at an ad like we just played. I mean, on IVF, I think it's disingenuous. It's a lie. But I can equally be outraged at that ad and say, how dare the Harris campaign air something that they knowingly know is false, is about an issue that's so important to so many people. So there's a spectrum of where the envelope gets pushed. And I think if we want to start going down there, that's fine. But just understand that that's the unfortunate nature of the game sometimes.
I just want to be clear. I see that the Democrats are doing this all the time. In fact, I was most in favor of Waltz over Shapiro because I hated the way Shapiro used that tactic against Mastriano in his primary. So I just want to be clear. I don't think Democrats are better than Republicans on this. So thanks. Now, my quick question for the group, for everybody, and this is really about the future, maybe not so much about this election, but it would be easier for me, especially to hear from Republicans and be open to in trying to create a better community in the United States to make our politics better. Do people agree that having 20% of the U.S. population decide, the seven swing states, roughly 20% of the U.S. population, do people agree or not agree that that's broken, that hurts our democracy and is not good?
So I will tell you my personal stance. I would love a country where every state divided their acted like Maine and Nebraska, well, at least Nebraska today. I like the idea because it creates more competition and puts us in places like we would go to California and compete, you know, in the, what are the 52nd, 53rd, New York 26. So you would have areas that you'd want to go. So I like that kind of a system where you keep the Electoral College, but the states apportion their votes by that. It makes it more competitive. I mean, look, I don't like the idea necessarily that 7 states have it all. It has shifted, right? Remember a couple of years ago, Florida, and then Tim Russert was famous for Florida, and then Ohio. So there is a bit of a shift here and there, but I think I hate to say this, but sometimes I feel like the reality is states aren't going to do that. So I would love a more competitive system. I think that would yield one, but and be realistic, meaning I think a national popular vote is unrealistic, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But I do think that there's a way that you could do it under the current construct.
Tim.
Yeah, I think there's possible electoral college reform. I think it's incredibly hard to do. I like Republicans. Sean is being more honest here than I think, and giving more than I think most Republicans would. There's a huge built-in electoral college advantage for them. Where we would go then is also a big question. To Sean's point, is it apportioned areas in states? Are those the House districts? If so, there's a bunch of gerrymandering questions there. So, you know, I don't think I have an answer on that question.
Okay.
But it's such a complicated question. I really focused on a simple starting place, which in other words, I wasn't presupposing a solution. To get to a solution that we're
and I think you're right. I think the problem is, yes, you asked it in a very good way, and that just generally speaking, I would love a more competitive process is probably the best way to answer that, right? It's not that I feel like those states can't. It's just so I would love a more competitive process to answer your question.
Okay. My summary of today's episode: a retired rabbi walks into the morning meeting. Rabbi, thank you for joining us. Grateful to you. Come back regularly. Keep us posted on your state. If you want to wish Sean happy birthday, do it in the chat quick because we're shutting down in a moment. Sean, happy birthday from all of us.
Thank you.
Big surprise. Fortunately, we're out of time, or I'll save your surprise. Tomorrow, we'll be back at 9 a.m. This afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern time. 3 p.m. Eastern time, you'll get a notification soon. I'll be back with the two-way to talk about what's happened during the day, as well as a little bit more on polling and a little bit more on ads than we already got to talk about, and also the question of the candidate schedules for this week. So have some good guests already lined up, not ready to announce them yet, but we'll see you at 3 Eastern for that. And Sean, Tim, and I will see you tomorrow morning, same bad time, same bad channel right here for the morning meeting. Guys, have a great day.
Thanks.